The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with tension. Representatives from dozens of different species crowded into the massive hall, their voices raised in heated arguments. At the center of it all stood Kira Anders, humanity's delegate, her posture straight and her gaze unwavering. She was used to being underestimated, but today she was about to make a decision that would echo across the galaxy. Kira had been fighting for humanity's voice in the Council for years. The Council, made up of ancient, powerful species, had always treated humans as insignificant. They passed laws that undermined humanity's rights, decisions that impacted millions without considering their well-being. And today, they were about to vote on a new law that would strip humanity of even more autonomy. Kira felt the weight of the decision. Her people had always been the underdogs, but this time, it was different. Humanity wasn't going to back down anymore. As the debate grew louder, Kira stood, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. If this law passes, humanity will leave the Galactic Council. We will no longer be a part of this system that disregards us. Her word hung in the air, and the room fell into a stunned silence. It wasn't just a threat. It was a declaration. Kira's statement sent shockwaves through the council. Some species looked at each other in disbelief, while others saw it as a challenge. But none of them expected Kira to go this far. She was a human, after all. How could her people survive on their own in a galaxy dominated by advanced species? As Kira walked out of the council chamber, her heart raced. She knew the risks. There were those who would not take kindly to this bold move. Yet she couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. Humanity had always been pushed to the edges, forced to follow rules that didn't fit their values. Today, that was changing. Back on Earth, news of Kira's declaration spread like wildfire. Social media buzzed with excitement and fear. People were divided. Some cheered for the courage of their representative, while others feared what might come next. Kira knew the road ahead would be difficult. There would be consequences, and many would doubt whether humanity could stand alone in the galaxy. In the quiet of her office, Kira stared out at Earth's blue sky, wondering what the future would hold. She had always believed that humanity's greatest strength was its ability to adapt, to innovate, and to survive against all odds. Now, it was time to prove that once and for all. But as she sat in the silence of her thoughts, she received a cryptic message. You've made a bold move, Kira, but don't think they'll let you go that easily. The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, and Kira felt a chill run down her spine. Who was this, and what did they know about the Council's plans? Kira couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's fight for freedom had just begun, and that the galaxy, in all its complexity, had much more in store for her and her people than she could ever have imagined. The story was only starting, and the real challenge was yet to come. The days following Kira's bold declaration were filled with uncertainty. Earth was on edge. Governments, military leaders, and civilians were all watching closely, waiting for the next move. Would humanity really stand by its decision to leave the Galactic Council, or would they crumble under the pressure from the more powerful species that ruled the galaxy? Kira sat in a crowded room at the United Nations, her fingers tapping nervously on the table. Representatives from all over the world had gathered, and they were all looking to her for guidance. She had made the decision to leave the Galactic Council, but now came the hard part. Convincing Earth's leaders that they could survive without the protection and influence of the most powerful government in the galaxy. Ambassador Anders, what exactly is our plan? Asked one of the representatives, his voice tinged with doubt. We've never been independent from the Council before. How do you propose we defend ourselves, let alone thrive? Kira took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. We may not have the advanced technology or the numbers of other species, but we have something they don't: the will to fight for our future. We don't need their permission to survive. We can build our own path, one step at a time. She could see the skepticism in their eyes, but she refused to back down. The decision had been made, and there was no turning back. Kira had believed in humanity's strength for a long time, but now she needed the world to believe in it too. Back at the Galactic Council, the reactions were far less supportive. News of humanity's exit had spread like wildfire through the galaxy, and the Council's most powerful leaders were furious. Species that had long seen humanity as little more than a nuisance were now questioning what it meant for the future of the galaxy. Some were angry, others were fearful, and a few saw an opportunity to manipulate the situation for their own gain. Council leader Galactic, a towering figure of alien intelligence and ancient power, convened an emergency meeting of the Council. "The humans have made a grave mistake," he said, his voice cold and calculated. "Their departure could destabilize the delicate balance we have worked so hard to maintain. We cannot allow this." The Council leaders debated fiercely. Some called for a military response, while others pushed for diplomatic negotiations. But in the end, Zalfor was clear on one thing: humanity could not be allowed to stand alone. The consequences of their defiance needed to be shown to the galaxy, forcefully, if necessary. Meanwhile, on Earth, Kiera and her advisors worked tirelessly to prepare for whatever was to come. She knew that the Council wouldn't let humanity walk away without retaliation. What she didn't know was exactly how far the Council would go to make an example out of them. As the days passed, rumors began to spread about strange alien ships appearing near Earth's orbit. Kiera's heart raced. The first signs of the Council's response had arrived. Earth was about to face its first test of survival outside the Council's protection. But Kiera wasn't afraid. If anything, she felt more determined than ever. Humanity had made its choice. Now it was time to stand firm and prove to the galaxy that they would never again bow to the will of the Galactic Council. The next phase was beginning, and it would shape humanity's future forever. The tension in Earth's atmosphere was palpable. Kiera Anders stood on the observation deck of the Defiance, humanity's flagship, her eyes scanning the vastness of space. She could see the first signs of the enemy fleet appearing at the edge of Earth's orbit. Alien ships that seemed to dwarf anything humanity had ever built. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here to remind humanity of its place in the galaxy. The Council had made their move. Kiera's hands clenched into fists as she stared at the looming threat. The fleet was massive, an armada from the Galactic Council, led by the enigmatic and ruthless General Draxer. The Council had clearly sent their strongest forces to punish humanity for leaving their grip. A full-scale invasion seemed inevitable. Her mind raced with plans and possibilities. The odds were against them, but Kiera knew humanity had something the Council never anticipated: their resilience. The aliens had underestimated the power of human will. They thought humanity would crumble at the first sign of danger. But they were wrong. On Earth, people watched the sky with a mixture of fear and curiosity. News reports flooded the airwaves. In every major city, crowds gathered, wondering if this was the beginning of the end. Were they ready for war? Would Earth survive the coming storm? Kiera's declaration was bold, but now it was time to face the consequences. Back on the Defiance, Kiera gathered her officers and military leaders in a war room. The walls were lined with holographic displays, showing the movement of the enemy fleet as it approached. The room was tense, but there was a determination in the air. The Defiance was humanity's first true warship, a ship designed for both defense and offense. It was the symbol of humanity's strength, and Kiera knew that it was their best hope. "We can't outgun them," Kiera said, her voice steady but firm. "But we can outsmart them. They're expecting us to be weak, to surrender without a fight. We're going to show them that humanity doesn't give up so easily." Her officers nodded in agreement. They had trained for moments like this, but the real test was about to begin. The Council ships were now within range, their massive forms casting shadows over Earth's horizon. Kiera knew that the Council wouldn't hesitate to strike. The time to act was now. She gave the order: "Prepare for battle. All hands, to your stations." The Defiance shuddered as its engines roared to life. Kiera's heart beat in her chest as the ship broke free of Earth's atmosphere, its path set for the oncoming enemy. Humanity's first warship was ready. The battle for Earth was about to begin, and there was no turning back. As the Defiance engaged the enemy, Kira watched from the command deck. The enemy fleet was massive, but humanity had something they hadn't counted on: determination. The Defiance darted through space, weaving between incoming fire and returning blasts with precision and skill. Humanity's warships were smaller, but they were faster and more agile. This was the kind of fight humanity excelled in: guerrilla tactics, hitting hard and fast. But the battle wasn't over yet. The Council fleet had far more resources, and the fight was far from one-sided. Kira's mind raced, calculating the next move. She couldn't afford to lose this fight. Not when humanity's future was at stake. She turned to her communications officer. "Get the Xurians on the line. It's time to call in our allies." In the darkness of space, humanity's struggle had just begun. The stakes had never been higher. The battle raged in space, a chaotic clash of lights and explosions against the backdrop of a dark, endless void. Kira Anders stood at the command center of the Defiance, her eyes fixed on the holographic display. Humanity's warship darted between the alien ships, narrowly avoiding incoming fire. The enemy fleet, led by the ruthless General Draxer, had underestimated them, and Kira intended to make them regret that mistake. "Status report," Kira called out, her voice steady despite the intensity of the situation. "Shields holding at 75%, Commander," her chief engineer, Lieutenant Harris, replied. "Weapons systems are online. We're outnumbered, but we got speed on our side." Kira nodded. The Defiance was smaller and more agile than the Council's warships, but they were facing overwhelming odds. Still, humanity's best quality had always been its resilience. They didn't give up easily, and Kira wasn't about to let her people down. "Good. Keep the pressure on them. We need to buy time for the Xurians to arrive," Kira ordered. Her heart pounded as she watched the battle unfold. The Defiance struck swiftly, sending blasts of energy into the Council ships, but the enemy's firepower was devastating. The Council fleet seemed to be everywhere, their ships surrounding humanity's fleet in a tight formation. The odds were rapidly shifting in the Council's favor. Kira gritted her teeth, refusing to show any sign of weakness. She knew that if they didn't act fast, they would be overwhelmed. Her mind raced, calculating the best strategy to turn the tide. "Commander," Lieutenant Harris said, his voice tinged with urgency, "the Xurian ships are entering our sector. They're responding to our distress signal." Kira's eyes lit up with hope. The Xurians had been humanity's unlikely allies since their departure from the Galactic Council. They were a small, resourceful species that had been oppressed by the Council for centuries. Now they were offering their support. It was a risky move, but it was the only chance they had to survive. "Bring them in," Kira said, her voice sharp. "We need their firepower now." The holographic display flickered as the Xurian ships appeared, small but efficient. Their ships moved with precision, coordinated with humanity's forces to take on the larger Council fleet. The Xurians' advanced technology complemented the Defiance's speed, and together they began to make a dent in the Council's defenses. "Xurian ships are in position," the communications officer reported. "They've synchronized their targeting systems with ours. We're stronger together." Kira allowed herself a brief moment of relief. The battle was far from won, but the tide was beginning to turn. She had always believed that humanity could stand on its own, but in that moment, she realized how important alliances were. The galaxy was vast and complex, and humanity's strength wasn't just in their courage. It was in their ability to adapt and build relationships, even with those who had once been enemies. "Commander," Harris said, his voice tinged with a new urgency, "the Council is retreating. They're pulling back their forces." Kira's eyes widened. The Council was retreating. It seemed impossible, but it was happening. Humanity, with the help of the Xurians, had managed to force the mighty Council to reconsider their attack. "Don't let them regroup," Kira ordered. "Follow them. We can't let this victory slip away." As the Defiance and the Xurian ships pursued the retreating Council fleet, Kira allowed herself a brief smile. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, humanity had shown the galaxy that they could stand strong against overwhelming forces. She looked out into space, the stars glimmering in the distance. Today, humanity had proven it wasn't just another insignificant species in the galaxy. Today, humanity had made its mark. But Kira knew this was just the beginning. The Galactic Council wouldn't give up easily. The fight for humanity's freedom had only just begun. The aftermath of the battle left Earth's fleet battered but not broken. The Defiance had taken heavy damage, but it had managed to hold its ground. The Council fleet had retreated, and for the first time in history, humanity had won a battle against the most powerful forces in the galaxy. Kira Anders stood on the bridge of the Defiance, staring out into the blackness of space, her mind racing. They had won, but at what cost? "Commander, the repairs are underway," Lieutenant Harris reported, his voice steady as usual. "We'll be operational again in a few hours, but we can't afford another engagement like that." Kira nodded, her thoughts clouded by the weight of the situation. They had bought themselves time, but they still had no idea what the Council would do next. General Draxer, the ruthless leader of the Council fleet, was not a creature known for letting things slide. Kira knew that the Council would be back, and they would come prepared. "We need to strengthen our position," Kira said, turning to face her officers. "We can't afford to be caught off guard again. I want all available ships to join the defense fleet. If the Council returns, we need to be ready." The officers nodded, and Kira could see the determination in their eyes. Humanity had faced impossible odds before, but they had never backed down. This fight, however, was bigger than anything they had ever imagined. As the crew worked tirelessly to repair the fleet, Kira stepped into the command center, her mind still on the larger picture. The battle had been a victory, but it wasn't enough to secure humanity's future. They needed more than just a defense fleet. They needed a strategy to stand against the Council long term. Kira's thoughts were interrupted by the sudden chiming of an incoming message. She turned to the communications officer, who looked up from his console with an uncertain expression. "Commander, we're receiving a message from the Xurians," the officer reported. "They want to speak with you." Kira's heart skipped a beat. The Xurians had been invaluable allies in the recent battle, but they were still a relatively unknown species. What did they want now? "Put it through," Kira said, her voice firm but curious. The holographic display flickered, and the face of a Xurian leader appeared. His eyes glowed with a soft blue light, and his small, wiry frame seemed almost fragile compared to the towering figures of the Council species. Despite his appearance, Kira knew better than to underestimate him. "Commander Anders," the Xurian leader said, his voice calm but urgent. "We have received word from a faction within the Council. They are planning to attack Earth again. But this time, they are coming with reinforcements. You cannot win this fight alone." Kira felt a chill run down her spine. Reinforcements. She had feared as much. The Council wasn't going to let this rebellion go unanswered. "We know you've just won a hard-fought battle," the Xurian leader continued, "but you must prepare for what is to come. The Council will not stop until humanity is brought to heel. You will need more than just strength. You will need allies. More than we can provide." Kira listened carefully. She had been hoping that the victory would buy them more time. But now it seemed like the Council was already planning their next move. Earth wasn't ready for another war, not one this large. "How can we fight back?" Kira asked, her voice resolute. The Xurian leader's eyes glowed brighter. "We have connections with other species, ones who have long been oppressed by the Council. They may be willing to join you, but only if you can prove that humanity is worth their trust. The Council's power is not absolute. There are cracks, and those cracks can be exploited." Kira considered his words. Humanity had always been resilient, but now they were being called upon to lead a galaxy-wide resistance. She didn't know if they were ready, but she knew they couldn't turn back now. "We'll do whatever it takes," Kira said firmly. We will show them that humanity is worth fighting for." The Cheerian leader nodded. "Then the next step is yours, Commander. We will prepare our forces, but you must convince the others that humanity can lead this fight. The galaxy is watching." The message ended, and Kira stood still for a moment, processing what had just been said. She had thought the worst was over, but now she realized it was only just beginning. Humanity had chosen to stand alone, but to win, they would need to unite the galaxy against the Council's tyranny. She turned to her officers. "Get the message out. We need to find every possible ally. If the Council wants war, we'll give them one they'll never forget." The fight for humanity's freedom had only just begun. Kara Anders stood on the bridge of the Defiance, staring at the holographic map that now covered the entire command center. The Council was regrouping, and they were not coming alone. Reports from the Ixurians had confirmed that a massive fleet, far larger than anything humanity or their allies could muster, was on its way. The battle for Earth was no longer just a fight for survival. It had become a fight for the very future of the galaxy. "Commander, we've made contact with several potential allies," Lieutenant Harris reported, his voice urgent. "There's the Zorvian Coalition, the Lumeri Trade Syndicate, and even some smaller factions that have suffered under the Council's rule for centuries. They're interested in joining us, but they need a leader, someone they can trust to stand against the Council." Kira nodded, her eyes narrowed. The weight of the decision was growing heavier. She had once thought humanity could stand alone, but the reality of this galactic war was setting in. The Council's influence stretched far, and while they had won the first battle, it was clear they couldn't win this alone. "Get in touch with all of them," Kira said, her voice firm. "But we don't have time to waste. The Council's fleet will be here within days. We need to move fast if we're going to be ready." As the Defiance continued to drift through space, Kira gathered her officers in the war room to discuss the next steps. The room was tense, filled with the kind of pressure that only a fight for survival could create. Each officer knew the stakes, and none of them were willing to back down. "We've got to be ready for what's coming," Kira began, pacing in front of the holographic display. "The Council has more ships, more resources, and more experience. We may not have the numbers, but we have something they don't: the will to fight." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "We'll unite the galaxy against them. We'll show them that the Council can't control us, that no matter how powerful they are, they'll never break humanity's spirit." Her officers exchanged determined glances. The fight would be long, hard, and filled with risks. But for the first time, they felt something they hadn't in a long while: hope. Hope that they could win. Hope that humanity's future wasn't yet sealed. Over the next few days, the Defiance made contact with the various factions Kara had reached out to. Some were hesitant, unsure if humanity could lead the charge against the Council. Others were ready, eager to finally strike back after years of oppression. The Zorvians, a fierce species of warriors, pledged their support, as did the Lumari, who controlled vital trade routes and had access to advanced technology. But there was a catch. Each faction wanted something in return. The Zorgians demanded Earth's resources in exchange for their ships, while the Lumari wanted trade agreements that would secure their influence in the galaxy. Kara didn't hesitate. She agreed to the terms, knowing that this was the price of freedom. If humanity was to survive, they needed allies, and they needed them now. "Commander," Harris said, breaking Kira from her thoughts, "we've received a message from the Council. It's a threat." Kira's stomach tightened. She walked over to the communications officer, who handed her the message. The message was simple, but the threat was clear. "We will crush your resistance. Surrender now, and we will spare your people. Refuse, and we will wipe you out," it read. Kira's hands trembled slightly as she read the message. The Council wasn't playing games anymore. This was a declaration of war. She turned to her officers, her face hardening. "There's no turning back now. The Council wants a fight, and we'll give them one they'll never forget." The room fell silent as the officers nodded. Humanity's future was on the line. Kira had led them this far, but the real battle was about to begin. The fight for Earth and the galaxy would soon reach its climax. Kira felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders, but she also felt something else: determination. Humanity had abandoned the Council, and now they were ready to make their stand. No matter what happened next, they wouldn't go down without a fight. The day of the final battle had arrived. Kara Anders stood on the bridge of the Defiance, her eyes scanning the space ahead, where the enemy fleet loomed. The Galactic Council had not wasted time. They had arrived in full force, and they were here to finish what they had started. The combined fleets of humanity and their allies were ready, but the stakes had never been higher. "Commander," Lieutenant Harris reported, his voice tense, "the enemy fleet is in position. We've got 3 times our number, and they're not holding back. They want to crush us completely." Kira's jaw tightened. She had known this day would come. After everything they had been through, this was it. The Council wasn't going to just let humanity walk away. The time for negotiations was over. There would be no second chances, but Kira wasn't afraid. Humanity had already proven that they could survive the impossible. Now it was time to fight for their future. "All ships, prepare for battle," Kira ordered. "This is it. We fight to win. We fight for Earth, for every species the Council has ever oppressed." The room filled with a sense of purpose. The Defiance's crew was ready, but they were only a small part of the larger fight. The Zorvians, Lumari, and even the Xurians were all aligned under humanity's banner now. Each ship had its orders. Each officer knew their role. They weren't just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for freedom, for a galaxy that no longer needed to bow to the Council. The battle began with a deafening roar. The enemy fleet opened fire, massive energy blasts lighting up the void of space. The Defiance jerked as it absorbed the first few hits, but the shields held. Kira's grip tightened on the armrest as she watched the battle unfold. Her mind was clear now. There was no room for hesitation. Every decision mattered. "Return fire," Kira commanded. "Target their lead ship. Take down their command vessel first." The crew worked in perfect sync as the Defiance unleashed a flurry of energy blasts. The lead Council ship shimmered as it absorbed the attack, but it began to lose power. The tide was beginning to turn. Humanity's fleet, though smaller, was more agile, more unpredictable. They moved like a pack of wolves, striking at the Council's forces with precision and speed. Kira's heart raced as she watched the battle unfold. The Zorvian ships fought with unmatched ferocity, their weapons tearing through enemy ships. The Lumari provided cover with their advanced technology, while the Xurians outmaneuvered their enemies, using their knowledge of Council tactics to outwit them at every turn. It was a perfect combination: human ingenuity, allied strength, and the courage to stand up for what was right. But the Council was not going to back down easily. Their ships were formidable, and they fought with all the power they had. Kira could see the massive energy cannons charging up on the Council flagship. The blast could destroy everything in its path, and she knew it was headed straight for Earth. "Commander, they're targeting Earth," Harris shouted, panic creeping into his voice. Kira's eyes locked onto the screen. She had to make a choice, and fast. Earth's survival depended on it. "All ships, focus fire on the flagship," she ordered, her voice steady. "We need to stop that cannon before it fires." The battle became a blur of energy blasts and evasive maneuvers as the combined fleets of humanity and its allies focused everything on the Council flagship. The Defiance darted through the chaos, narrowly avoiding blasts as it closed the gap. With one final, concentrated burst of energy, humanity's fleet struck the Council flagship. The massive ship erupted in a brilliant explosion, and Kira's heart skipped a beat. It was a victory, but it wasn't over yet. "Commander, the flagship is down," the communications officer called out. "The Council fleet is retreating. They're pulling back." Kara let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The council might have retreated for now, but this was only the beginning. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's strength, and they had shown that they would never bow to anyone again. "Victory," Kira whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "But this is just the first step." The Defiance and the rest of the fleet floated in the silence of space. They had taken on the might of the Galactic Council and won. But there was still much to do. The galaxy had changed forever, and so had humanity's place in it. Kira knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of humanity's new chapter in the galaxy. The war was far from over, but the victory against the Galactic Council had shaken the very foundations of the galaxy. Kara Anders stood at the helm of the Defiance, watching Earth from the command deck. It was hard to believe that just days ago, the future of humanity seemed so uncertain. Now they had proven that they could stand on their own. The Defiance had become a symbol, not just of human resilience, but of hope for countless species oppressed by the Council. Kara had led them through the first battle, but she knew that their survival now depended on the alliances they had forged and the strength to keep their promise of freedom. "Commander," Lieutenant Harris called, his voice steady, "the fleet is holding position. We've received messages from our allies. They're ready to begin reconstruction efforts, and many more factions are reaching out to join us." Kira nodded, feeling a sense of accomplishment, but she also knew that the real challenge lay ahead. "That's good news, but we can't let our guard down. The Council may have retreated, but they will come back. And when they do, we need to be prepared for whatever they throw at us." Kira's thoughts were interrupted by a flashing message on the communication console. It was an encrypted message from the Chirians. "Commander," the Chirian leader's voice came through, calm but urgent. "We have received troubling news. A faction within the Council, one that still holds considerable power, is preparing a new offensive. They intend to launch an all-out attack, one that will make the previous battle look small by comparison." Kira's expression hardened. The victory they had won was significant, but it was only temporary. "How soon will they strike?" Kira asked, already calculating their next move. "We don't know for sure," the Chirian leader replied, "but it's coming. They believe that if they crush humanity completely, the rest of the galaxy will fall back in line." Kira's mind raced. The Council had never truly believed that humanity could be a real threat to their power. They thought they could silence Earth with one swift blow. Now, humanity was on their radar for good. "We need to move fast," Kira said, turning to her officers. "We can't afford to wait for them to come to us. It's time to go on the offensive." "Commander, we've also received some troubling intelligence," Harris continued. "Some of the factions we've allied with are starting to hesitate. They fear the Council's wrath and wonder if they should have stayed neutral." The victory was impressive, but it hasn't changed the galaxy's balance of power just yet. Kira knew that she would have to convince their allies that humanity wasn't backing down. The victory against the Council was important, but it was also a message to the galaxy. Humanity was here to stay, and they would fight for their place in the stars. "We can't afford to lose the momentum," Kira said firmly. "The Council may have sent us a message, but we need to send one right back. Humanity will lead this fight, and together we will show the galaxy that we will not be crushed. Not now. Not ever." Kira stood tall, a leader who had seen the fear in the eyes of the Council's most powerful leaders, and had stood against it. Earth had taken its first steps toward freedom. Now it was time to take the next one. The galaxy was watching, and humanity was ready to rise. The Defiance sailed through space, its crew united by a common purpose. The Council may have underestimated them once, but humanity had shown that they would not be defeated. The battle for the galaxy was far from over, but with Kira leading the charge, there was no turning back. The calm after the storm was short-lived. Although Earth had won a hard-fought victory, Kira Anders knew that their enemies wouldn't stay quiet for long. The Galactic Council was gathering its forces, and humanity's fight for freedom was about to get much more intense. Kiera stood in the war room of the Defiance, her eyes focused on the star map in front of her. The Council's next offensive was fast approaching. "Commander, the Xurians have confirmed the Council fleet is already mobilizing," Lieutenant Harris reported, his face grim. "We've intercepted transmissions indicating that they're amassing a fleet much larger than before. They're coming for Earth, and this time, they'll have backup." Kiera clenched her fists, trying to keep her cool. She had expected this. The Council wasn't just going to let humanity's defiance slide. But now, the time for defense was over. She needed to act. "All hands to battle stations," Kiera ordered, her voice steady. "This will be humanity's biggest test yet. We're going to take the fight to them." The Defiance and its allied fleet had been preparing for weeks. The crews were battle-hardened, and the spirit of unity among the various factions was stronger than ever. The Zorvians had sharpened their weapons, the Lumari had provided advanced shield technology, and the Xurians had shared their tactical expertise. Humanity wasn't alone this time, and together they had a chance to do what had once seemed impossible: defeat the Council. The battle didn't take long to reach them. The enemy fleet emerged from the dark void of space, massive warships with weapons powerful enough to destroy planets. Their arrival was a terrifying sight, but Kiera stood tall. She wouldn't let fear take over. They had already proven themselves once, and now they had to do it again. "Commander," Lieutenant Harris called out. "They're opening fire. Incoming missile barrage from their front line." The Defiance shuddered as the first volley of missiles struck its shields. The blast rocked the ship, but the shields held strong. The crew had been expecting this. Kiera knew their best chance was to be fast, to keep the Council on their toes and force them into mistakes. "All ships, return fire," Kiera ordered. "Target their lead ships. We can't let them break through our defenses." As the Defiance's weapons fired back, energy beams and missile fire lit up the space around them. The Allied fleet moved in perfect coordination, circling the Council's ships with calculated precision. The Zorvian ships were relentless, charging forward with aggressive tactics, while the Lumari ships protected the flanks, their advanced shields deflecting the Council's fire. Humanity's ships, smaller but faster, darted in and out of enemy lines, striking and retreating, keeping the Council on edge. "We've got them on the defensive," one of the officers reported. "The Council fleet is starting to break formation." Kiera's heart raced as she saw the first signs of victory. The Council's fleet was struggling to maintain its coordination. Humanity's tactics were working. It wasn't enough to simply be strong. They had to outsmart the Council at every turn, and they were doing it. But just as victory seemed within reach, the largest Council ship, a colossal dreadnought, fired its main cannon. The blast was aimed straight at Earth. "Earth's shields won't hold against that," Harris shouted. Kiera didn't hesitate. "All ships, focus everything on that dreadnought. We have to stop that cannon now." The battle intensified as every ship in the Allied fleet concentrated fire on the Council dreadnought. The energy blasts from their weapons hammered against the massive ship's shields, but it wasn't enough. The dreadnought was too powerful, and it was getting closer to Earth. Kiera's mind raced. If they didn't stop that cannon, Earth would be destroyed. She needed to act quickly. In a moment of clarity, she issued a final order. "Prepare for a direct assault. We'll take down that dreadnought up close." The Defiance and the Allied ships broke off from the main fight, racing toward the dreadnought. They had one shot at this. As they approached, the dreadnought fired its main cannon again, sending a deadly energy beam toward Earth. In a split second, the Defiance dove into the blast path, launching everything they had at the dreadnought's vulnerable engines. The resulting explosion shook the entire battlefield. The dreadnought's shields collapsed, and with one final blow, humanity and its allies managed to destroy the Council's flagship. The remaining Council ships, now leaderless and weakened, began to retreat. Kiera took a breath, her mind still processing what had just happened. The battle was over for now. Humanity had done it. They had faced the Council's might and won once again.